Alright, hello. Sorry, it's very dark in my room right now. I may have given myself a concussion and I'm very sensitive to light. So, anyways, let's go. So everything that we've learned for the semester, I have my notebook right here. I'm not going to read every little single thing, but I'll try to say what the module is about briefly. And then at the end, I'll say how it connects to mastering. Alright, so our very first lecture was Ultimate Guide to the Quick Sampler. And so this taught us what sampling means, and it can mean like three different things, meaning the sample rate, or it could mean the use of someone else's music and you're putting that into your own and making it your own thing. And the third one would be the creation of an instrument, and that was mostly what we focused on. And so like the four categories of a sampler would be the classic one-shot slicer and recorder. And so we basically learned what sampling is and then how to create our own little mini instrument. All right, and so, and going on with that idea, our second lecture was making guitars from scratch. I remember I put a rubber band on a glass bottle, and so I made my own guitar that way. So that was really interesting on how to make our own instruments that way, like improvised instruments. And the third one was how to make a guitar sound good. And so we learned a lot of different types of amps and that have different sort of tones. Like we learned about the Tweed combos, we learned about the classic American combos, and we learned about, let's see, vintage, the British stacks. Learned about a lot of those like metal stacks, let's see, British alternatives, and all of those. And then we learned about mic placements, specifically for like singers or instruments. And you can move the mic around. Like for example, I remember we're listening to a guitar and like you place the mic in front of the amp and at different areas around the amp, and they gave off a slightly different timbre. And so that was fun messing around with that. All right, and the third module was reverb, and we learned about what impulse responses are, and they're a way of capturing the acoustic space of a location. Like for example, if you drop a penny in a church, and like let's say like a classic cathedral, it's gonna have a lot more echoes, and the sound will sustain more than if you were to drop it on the concrete outside. And so, yeah, then the same thing with that. Let's see. Then we watch the recording session videos. All right, then another vocal session on, let's see, on Logic Pro. Then we learned how to remix a song. So remixing is taking a song of someone else and altering it so that the song is still recognizable, but it could still stand alone as its own piece. And so like an example I thought of was, I remember for our discussions, we put in several examples of remixes. The one that I did was for Michael Jackson. I can't remember the name of the artist, but I remember that was a funky experience. All right, we learned about all the tools to remixing and bootleg versus remix. Bootleg is very legal, remix is not. And there's a whole bunch of more details into that, but I don't want this video to be too long. Then we learned how to add drums to any song. And one of the tips was one way to figure out the key is to pull up an instrument in question and play it. Let's see, usually set the tempo for drums because that sets the tempo for everything else. And for that you can use the adapt function, which gives you the tempo analysis. And then the next lecture we learned about panning. And so there's 3 pan options such as stereo pan, balance, binaural pan, and adjusting your pan for your audience. Like for example, you're gonna have different panning versus listening to it from a YouTube video than you are gonna do it live. Like that sort of idea. Then we had our introduction to MIDI. And let's see. And then I wrote a paragraph for that, I'll just go over that. Let's see, then we learned about subtractive synthesis, and then that we learned what attack, decay, sustain, release, and the envelope is, as well as a router, and our retro synths, and what the features of the retro synths are. such as the wave bank, the analog, filter, audible oscillator, and voice detour unison. All right, and then after all that, we came back to the drums, and we learned how to make them sound good and how to make them fit the song's aesthetic, basically. All right, let's see. We learned about flex pitch and how to like tune or detune some voices, which sound pretty funky. And one of not the most recent lecture, but semi-recent, was the IDAM intro, or IDAM, and this meaning the inter-device audio and MIDI, and this allows us to connect iOS devices to our Mac computer, and it's mostly a Mac specific thing. All right, and last but not least, the mastering a song. So I believe all of these topics lead to mastering a song because it shows us the basics of recording a song and plus how to make it sound good. And mastering is the ultimate version of the recording. And so let's see. And we talk about it at the very end is because mastering it is like the bow on top of a present at Christmas or something. It's the cherry on top, the final draft, basically. The final draft of everything that you've been working on up until now, and that's what people are going to hear. The mastering is the final version, so that's the version that you're going to be selling, and so you want it to sound good and you want to know how to make it sound good. So that's why I believe we have it at the very end. And so yeah, and the interview with the recording engineer also said that each different mastering it takes each song, the mastering process will either be longer or shorter depending how long the song is and the type of song. Like a folk song will probably be just vocals and a banjo or guitar versus an orchestral piece, which might be 6 to 8 minutes and having like 7 different instruments. Every mastering session is going to be different depending on the song, but more or less the process is the same. You want to make it sound clear and crisp and as best as it possibly can. And yeah, that's about it.